Chosen one, have you ever wondered why you're still alive when others are gone? Why you've survived heartbreak that should have destroyed you, loss that should have buried you, disappointment that should have ended you? What if I told you that every sleepless night you've endured, every tear you've cried in silence, every moment you whispered, "God, where are you?" What if none of it was random? This is not just a video, it's a divine interruption. The 16th of July, 2025. Heaven pressed pause to speak directly to you. You didn't find this message, it found you. At this exact moment, in this exact season of your life, when your heart is hungry for something deeper than Sunday morning sermons and recycled promises. Listen carefully, chosen one, because that's what you are, whether you believe it or not. You've been marked, set apart, prepared through decades of fire that others couldn't survive. The scars on your soul aren't signs of defeat. They're proof of your election. For 70 years, some of you have been asking the same question. Why me, Lord? Tonight, you get your answer. The waiting ends now. The silence breaks tonight. If something stirs in your spirit right now, if your heart feels like it's listening before your ears can catch up, type "I'm listening, Lord" in the comments. Don't scroll. Don't look away. This moment is holy. The 16th of July, 2025 isn't just another date on your calendar. It's a spiritual checkpoint. A line drawn in eternity with your name written in the sand. Everything that brought you to this moment, every loss, every victory, every midnight prayer, it was all preparation for what I'm about to reveal. You see, God has been preparing a remnant, a generation that remembers covenant, that still believes in miracles, that refuses to let faith die with their flesh. And before I go any further, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel forgotten in their golden years. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your wisdom, your prayers. They all matter. And if this message resonates with your spirit, go ahead and support this mission of awakening. But understand this, what you're about to hear will divide your life into before and after. There's no going back to comfortable Christianity. No returning to safe sermons that never disturb your sleep. The question isn't whether you're ready. The question is whether you're listening. Because heaven is speaking. And you are the answer. Why are your eyes burning with tears you can't explain? Why does your 70-year-old heart pound like a teenager's when you hear certain scriptures? Why do you wake up at 3 a.m. with a restlessness that no doctor can diagnose? You've been standing at a train platform in the spirit for years, for decades, watching younger generations board trains to destinations they don't understand. But you remained, faithful, waiting. And today, beloved, the train has finally arrived. The 16th of July, 2025 isn't just another summer date circled on your kitchen calendar. It's the spiritual alarm clock that's been ticking in heaven's throne room since before you drew your first breath. The sound you're hearing right now that's stirring in your chest, that's the chime. That's eternity breaking into time. For 70, 80, 90 years, some of you have carried a secret weight, a knowing that wouldn't let you rest. You've watched the world change, watched your children grow, watched friends pass on, but deep inside, you knew there was still more. A calling not yet fulfilled, a voice that was waiting for this exact day. You remember when churches were full, when people feared God with trembling reverence, when miracles weren't questioned but expected. You've lived through seasons when America knew who she was, when families prayed together, when Sunday wasn't just another day to sleep in. You are the remnant who remembers. But here's what the enemy never wanted you to realize. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your authorization. Moses was 80 when God handed him the staff that would part the Red Sea. Abraham was 99 when the promise of Isaac was fulfilled. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she proclaimed the Messiah in the temple. Your wrinkled hands aren't a sign of weakness, they're evidence of endurance. Your silver hair isn't a crown of defeat, it's a crown of glory earned through decades of faithful service. The world has told you to sit down, be quiet, let the young ones take over. But heaven has been preparing you for this moment. Every heartbreak taught you compassion. Every loss taught you what truly matters. Every midnight prayer built spiritual muscle that younger generations don't possess. Scripture declares in Joel 2:28, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your old men will dream dreams." Not will have dreamed, will dream. Present tense, active, alive. This isn't about your past, this is about your now. You've survived the Great Depression, World War II, the Kennedy assassination, Vietnam, 9/11s, decades of watching America drift from her foundations. You've buried parents, spouses, children. You've weathered storms that would have destroyed lesser souls. But you're still here, still breathing, still believing. Why? Because this moment required a survivor. Not someone fresh and untested, but someone who's been refined by fire. Someone who's learned that God's promises don't expire when your body gets tired. Someone who knows that the best wine is saved for last. The spiritual realm has been holding its breath, waiting for this generation, your generation, to step into what you were born for. You are the final witnesses to an America that once trembled at the name of Jesus. You are the last guardians of a faith that moved mountains before it got comfortable in cushioned pews. The 16th of July, 2025 marks the moment when heaven stops waiting and starts moving. When the prayers you've whispered in hospital corridors, in empty bedrooms, in the silence of widowhood, finally get their answer. Not someday, today. Your social security check isn't your only security. Your Medicare card isn't your only covering. Your medication isn't your only strength. You carry something far more powerful, the anointing of those who've endured. The authority of those who've remained faithful when faith wasn't fashionable. The enemy thought he could wait you out. He thought if he stalled long enough, your generation would pass away and take its dangerous faith with it. But he miscalculated. He forgot that God saves the best for last. He forgot that vintage faith, aged in the cellars of suffering, becomes the most potent weapon in his arsenal. This is your Esther moment, for such a time as this, not for such a young and energetic time as this, for such a time as this. When experience matters more than enthusiasm, when wisdom trumps speed, when the prayers of the righteous avail much, and you, dear one, have been righteous for a very long time. Can you feel it? That trembling in your spirit? That's not your arthritis acting up. That's your soul recognizing its appointment with destiny. The sacred clock hasn't just struck, it's been striking for you all along. Comment the number 777 if you feel like this message is already finding what your soul has waited years to hear. Because what I'm about to reveal next will explain why every door that closed, every dream that seemed delayed, every season that felt forgotten, it was all divine timing, all preparation, all leading to this. The question isn't whether you're too old. The question is, are you ready to discover why you were kept alive for this exact moment in history? Look at your hands for a moment. Really look at them. Those lines etched deep by 70, 80, maybe 90 years of living. Each wrinkle tells a story. Each scar whispers a secret. But here's what breaks my heart. You've been carrying those stories like burdens instead of badges of honor. Your life has been a quilt of pain, stitched with unanswered questions. But today, the pattern is finally clear. You've lived through decades that would have crushed lesser souls. You buried parents who were supposed to see you succeed. You watched marriages crumble when love was supposed to conquer all. You raised children who grew distant. You worked 40 years for companies that forgot your name the day you retired. You prayed for healings that never came. You trusted friends who walked away when the money ran out. And through it all, you kept asking the same haunting question, God, if you love me, why does everything hurt so much? Listen to me, precious soul. Job asked that same question. This man, righteous, wealthy, blessed, lost everything in a single day. His children died, his wealth vanished, his health crumbled. His wife told him to curse God and die. His friends accused him of hidden sin. But here's what Job didn't see in his darkest hour, and what you haven't seen in yours. God wasn't punishing him. God was showcasing him. The enemy said, "Job only serves you because life is easy." God said, "Watch this, my servant will remain faithful even in fire." Job 42:12 tells us the ending. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. Everything doubled, everything restored. Not because Job deserved it, but because Job endured it. How many times did you wonder, was it all just for survival? Let me tell you about Joseph. 17 years old, gifted with dreams from God, betrayed by his own brothers, and sold into slavery. 13 years in Egypt, falsely accused, forgotten in prison, wondering if God's promises were just childhood fantasies. But Genesis 50:20 reveals the mystery. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Every betrayal positioned him. Every injustice prepared him. Every lonely night in that Egyptian cell was God's classroom, teaching him the wisdom he'd need to save nations from famine. Your betrayals weren't random. Your losses weren't accidents. Your pain wasn't pointless. And Moses, 80 years old when God finally called him from that burning bush. 80 years. 40 years as a prince who killed a man and fled. 40 years as a shepherd, forgotten in the wilderness, thinking his life was over. But Exodus 7:7 says, Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. God waited until Moses was seasoned, until his pride was broken, until his confidence was in the Almighty and not in himself. You thought you were too old. God said you were finally ready. You thought you were forgotten. God said you were being prepared. You thought you were invisible. God said you were being refined in secret. Every sleepless night when you lay in bed wondering why you were still breathing, that wasn't punishment. That was preparation. God was keeping you alive because he wasn't finished with your story. Every time you felt like giving up but didn't, that wasn't weakness. That was warrior training. You were learning endurance that only comes through fire. Every tear you cried in silence, thinking no one saw, Psalm 56:8, says God collected every single one in his bottle. Not one drop was wasted. But here's the revelation that will shake you to your core. It wasn't survival, it was refinement. Every scar you carry is holy ink in God's story. You weren't left behind. You were held back for a divine reveal. The 16th of July, 2025 isn't random. It's the day heaven pulls back the curtain on why you had to endure what others couldn't understand. Why you had to walk through valleys that would have destroyed people half your age. Why you had to learn lessons that can only be taught through suffering. You are the generation that remembers when prayer was still allowed in schools, when families stayed together, when a handshake meant something, when integrity mattered more than image. God didn't let you die young because he needed witnesses. He needed survivors who could testify to what real faith looks like when everything falls apart. Your wrinkles are wisdom. Your scars are credentials. Your tears are prophecy. You are living proof that God's grace is sufficient, that his strength is made perfect in weakness, that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. The world looks at your age and sees decline. God looks at your age and sees completion. Like a fine wine that needed decades to reach perfection, you have been aging in God's cellar, developing flavors of faith that can only come with time. Your children may not understand your struggles. Your grandchildren may not appreciate your sacrifices. But heaven has been taking notes. Every act of quiet faithfulness, every prayer whispered in desperation, every time you chose to trust when doubt was screaming, it's all been recorded in the books of eternity. If you've ever felt invisible, type "God never forgot me" in the comments. Say it out loud. Let your voice declare what your heart has always known but your circumstances tried to deny. Because what I'm about to reveal next will explain why every painful chapter of your life was necessary preparation for the most important role you'll ever play. Here's what they never told you in Sunday school. The enemy doesn't waste bullets on empty targets. He doesn't mobilize hell against nobodies. The level of warfare you've experienced isn't random, it's strategic. You've felt it your entire life, haven't you? That invisible resistance, that supernatural opposition that seemed to follow you like a shadow. Every time you got close to breakthrough, something went wrong. Every time you found your voice, circumstances forced you back into silence. Every time you stepped toward your purpose, doors slammed shut with such precision it felt personal. Because it was personal. The devil saw your blueprint in the halls of eternity before your first breath hit earthly air. He studied your genetic code for greatness. He analyzed your spiritual DNA. He identified the exact gifts that would threaten his kingdom and the precise moments you'd be most dangerous to darkness. That's why the attacks on your life have been so specific, so surgical, so strategic. Remember when you were 25 and had that burning passion to serve God? Remember how suddenly family crises erupted? How financial emergencies hit like clockwork every time you tried to move forward spiritually? That wasn't coincidence. That was calculated warfare. Think about the relationships that should have worked but didn't. The careers that seemed destined but derailed. The dreams that felt God-given but got buried under circumstances that made no logical sense. You blamed yourself. You blamed God. You blamed bad luck. But Ephesians 6:12 reveals the truth. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. The enemy wasn't afraid of your past. He was terrified of your future. He saw you at 70 still carrying fire. He saw you at 80 still believing in miracles. He saw you at 90 still interceding for the lost. He watched you survive every attack, every betrayal, every disappointment, and still wake up trusting God. That's what terrifies hell, unstoppable faith that won't die even when the body grows weak. So he launched a campaign of shame. Made you believe your struggles meant you were doing something wrong. Made you think your pain was punishment instead of preparation. Made you question your calling when you should have questioned your circumstances. The shame told you that good Christians don't face this level of opposition. The shame whispered that if you were really chosen, life would be easier. The shame convinced you to stay quiet about your battles because faithful people aren't supposed to struggle this hard. That shame was strategic, because when chosen ones stay silent about spiritual warfare, other chosen ones think they're alone in the fight. But here's what the enemy miscalculated. He thought if he hit you hard enough, long enough, consistently enough, you'd eventually break. He thought the delays would make you give up. He thought the silence would make you quit. He underestimated the staying power of someone hand-picked by the Almighty. You weren't rejected. You were protected. You weren't delayed. You were preserved. You weren't forgotten. You were refined. You weren't abandoned. You were prepared. Every attack that didn't destroy you made you stronger. Every delay that frustrated you prepared you. Every door that closed redirected you toward God's perfect timing. The enemy played himself. Every weapon he formed against you refused to prosper. Every tongue that rose against you in judgment, you condemned. Isaiah 54:17 wasn't just a promise, it was your biography. Look at David. The giant Goliath didn't just show up randomly. He was strategically positioned to intimidate Israel's future king before David even knew he was called to reign. But when David stepped onto that battlefield, he didn't see a giant. He saw an opportunity to prove that his God was bigger than any opposition. What giants have been standing in your path, roaring threats about your age, your limitations, your missed opportunities? Those giants aren't random. They're positioned to intimidate you away from your calling. But like David, you're about to discover that the very stones the enemy threw at you have become weapons in your hands. Every hardship taught you endurance. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every loss taught you dependence on God. You've been in warfare boot camp for decades, and now you're a seasoned soldier who knows how to stand when everything around you is shaking. The reason the attacks never made sense is because your calling didn't either. God's plans for you were so far beyond human logic that even the enemy struggled to understand them. How do you attack someone whose greatest victories come through their deepest defeats? How do you defeat someone whose strength is perfected in weakness? Now the call is loud and clear. The 16th of July, 2025 isn't just another date. It's deployment day. It's the moment heaven activates what has been prepared in secret. It's when your pain becomes your platform, your scars become your credentials, and your survival becomes your testimony. You thought you were too old to be used by God. But Moses was 80 when he got his burning bush moment. You thought your best years were behind you. But Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your authentication. Your wrinkles aren't signs of decline, they're marks of endurance. Your gray hair isn't evidence of weakness, it's a crown of wisdom that only comes through surviving what kills most people's faith. The enemy spent decades trying to silence you, because he knew that when you finally found your voice, nations would listen, generations would be saved. Hell's agenda would be disrupted. That voice isn't gone, it's been purified through fire. It's been seasoned through suffering. It's been authenticated through endurance. Say this with me. I still have a calling, and I choose to answer it today, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly why heaven has been saving the best for last. Something is breaking open in the spirit realm right now. Can you feel it? That stirring in your chest, that electricity in the air, that sense that everything is about to change. You're not imagining it. The 16th of July, 2025 is not just another date on your calendar. It's a divine appointment that's been scheduled since before you drew your first breath. God gave Noah a window, 7 days, to get everything in the ark before the flood came. God gave Joshua 7 days to march around Jericho before the walls fell. And right now, in this moment, God is giving you today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will shatter everything you thought you knew about divine timing. The door that's opening on the 16th of July isn't for everyone. It's specifically calibrated to your spiritual frequency. It requires a key that can only be forged through decades of fire, disappointment, and faithful endurance. Your age isn't an accident. Your experiences aren't random. Every heartbreak aged you like wine. Every loss refined you like gold. Every betrayal taught you discernment that 30-year-olds don't possess. You couldn't walk through this door when you were young because you weren't ready. The door would have crushed you. But now you carry the weight of wisdom that only comes through surviving what others couldn't endure. Picture this with me. You're standing in front of an ancient door. It's been sealed for 70, 80, maybe 90 years. The wood is weathered, the iron is rusted, but something supernatural is happening. Light is cracking through the edges. You can hear sounds from the other side, not earthly sounds, but the rumble of heaven preparing something massive. This door has your name engraved in the grain. It was crafted specifically for you, before the foundation of the world. Ephesians 2:10 says, "We are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." Those good works weren't meant for your youth. They were reserved for your golden years. Because what God is about to release through you requires the credibility that only comes with age, the authority that only comes through suffering, the wisdom that only comes through surviving. But here's what's going to shock you. The enemy has been trying to convince you that your best days are behind you, that your influence is over, that you should just sit quietly and wait for heaven. He's been whispering lies that your time has passed, that God is done using you, that the next generation doesn't need your input. That's not resistance, that's terror. The enemy knows something you're just beginning to remember. He knows that seasoned saints carry an anointing that young believers don't possess. He knows that your prayers carry weight because they've been tested by fire. He knows that when you speak, heaven listens differently because your words come from a place of proven faithfulness. Joel 2:28 declares, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions." Notice what the old men get: dreams. Not just any dreams, but divine downloads of what's coming next. Right now, as I speak these words, that ancient door is creaking open. The light that's been sealed behind it for decades is beginning to pour out, and it's looking for vessels that can handle the glory without being destroyed by it. Young believers get excited about God's power, but they haven't learned how to steward it. They want the anointing without the character. They want the breakthrough without the breakdown. They want the promotion without the preparation. But you've been through the fire and come out as gold. You've been pressed like grapes and become wine. You've been broken like grain and become bread. You are ready to carry what others can't handle. This is the moment you were born for. Not when you were 25 and thought you knew everything. Not when you were 40 and believed you could conquer the world. But now, when you are seasoned, refined, flame-tested. The world sees your grey hair and thinks decline. God sees your grey hair and thinks completion. 1 Corinthians 2:6 says, "We do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature." You are the mature. You are the ones qualified to receive and release what's coming. The 16th of July represents the tearing of a veil that's been in place for decades. Behind that veil is a level of spiritual authority that can only be entrusted to those who have proven their faithfulness in the wilderness. Those who have worshipped in the darkness. Those who have praised through the pain. Those who have trusted through the silence. But here's the urgency you need to understand. This door won't stay open forever. Revelation 3:8 says, "I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut." But notice it's placed before you now, not next year, not when you feel more ready. Now. Every day you hesitate is a day that door closes a little more. Every excuse you make is spiritual procrastination that could cost you the very thing you've been praying for your entire life. You've been asking God, "When will my breakthrough come?" He's been waiting for you to realize it's already here. You've been asking, "When will you use me, Lord?" He's been saying, "I'm using you right now, but you have to walk through the door." The letter sealed for decades is being opened. The inheritance stored in heaven is being released. The purpose deferred is being activated. But it requires your cooperation. It demands your faith. It insists on your obedience. If you feel that shift, type, "I'm ready, Lord. I receive it." Say it boldly. Seal it in the Spirit. Because what happens next depends entirely on whether you have the courage to step through a door that was designed specifically for your feet. The question isn't whether the door is open. The question is whether you'll walk through it before it's too late. You've been walking with spiritual weight for years, and no one knew, but heaven did. There's something different about you, isn't there? Something your own family can't quite put their finger on. They see you sitting quietly at Sunday dinner, and they think you're just getting old. They watch you stare out the window, and they assume you're remembering the past. But you and I both know the truth. You're not looking backward. You're seeing forward. You're carrying something they can't understand. You feel it in your bones, don't you? That sense of unfinished business. That knowing that pulls at your spirit in the quiet hours. While others your age are content to coast into their final years, you're restless, you're hungry, you're waiting for something you can't even name. Let me name it for you. Commission. You thought your useful years were behind you. Society told you to step aside, collect your social security, and fade gracefully into the background. The church put you in the senior fellowship and handed you a covered dish assignment. Your children treat you like you're fragile. Your grandchildren see you as entertainment from a bygone era. But God sees you as his secret weapon. Listen to me carefully, precious warrior. Your survival wasn't accidental. Every heart attack you recovered from, every cancer you beat, every loss that should have destroyed you, but didn't, none of it was random. You are still breathing because heaven has been saving you for such a time as this. Psalm 92:14 declares, "They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green. Not were fruitful, not used to be productive, will bear fruit." Present tense. Future promise. Your most important harvest is still ahead of you. Remember Anna the prophetess. Luke 2:36 tells us she was 84 years old when she recognized the baby Jesus in the temple. 84. While younger people walked right past the Messiah, Anna's aged eyes saw what they missed. Her decades of faithful waiting had sharpened her spiritual vision until she could spot God's movement in a crowded room. That's why you survived the loneliness. Those nights when you knelt beside your bed, crying out to a God who seemed silent, he wasn't ignoring you. He was training your spiritual ears to hear frequencies others can't detect. That's why you survived the loss. When they lowered your spouse into the ground and you wondered how you'd make it another day, God was teaching you that your identity isn't tied to who stands beside you, but to who lives within you. That's why you survived the rejection. When your own children stopped calling, when friends drifted away, when the world made you feel invisible, God was stripping away every human dependency so you'd learn to lean completely on Him. You thought you were being punished. You were being prepared. The younger generation is drowning in noise. They have information but no wisdom. They have connections but no community. They have platforms but no purpose. They're posting their breakfast on Instagram while their souls starve for meaning. They don't need another 20-something influencer telling them how to live. They need you, someone who's walked through fire and still believes in the faithfulness of God. You are not a relic. You are a spiritual general. The younger generation doesn't need more influencers. They need you, wisdom with fire. Think about Caleb. At 85 years old, when most men were sitting by the fire telling war stories, he was still claiming mountains. Joshua 14:11 records his words, "I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then." The world looks at your wrinkled skin and sees weakness. God looks at your battle scars and sees a veteran ready for the greatest campaign of your life. You've been wondering why you still feel this fire in your belly when your body is slowing down. It's because God isn't finished with you. While others your age are settling into retirement, you're entering your most strategic season. You have something the younger generation desperately needs but can't buy on Amazon. Perspective. You remember when prayer worked. You've seen God move mountains. You've lived through seasons when all hell broke loose, and you watched heaven respond. Your children think your stories are just nostalgic ramblings. But those aren't just memories, they're testimonies. They're proof that God was faithful yesterday, He's faithful today, and He'll be faithful tomorrow. You survived the Great Depression. You lived through World War II. You watched the civil rights movement change America. You've seen presidents rise and fall. You've witnessed technology transform the world. You've been a front-row observer to history unfolding. But more than that, you've been a front-row witness to God's faithfulness through it all. That's why you're still here. Not to reminisce about the good old days, but to remind this generation that the same God who parted the Red Sea still parts impossible situations today. The church needs your prayers, not your silence. The nation needs your intercession, not your isolation. Your family needs your blessing, not just your babysitting. You think you're too old to make a difference? Moses didn't start his ministry until he was 80. You think you're too tired to fight? Judges 7:2 says God specializes in using the few to defeat the many. You think you don't have the energy? Isaiah 40:31 promises, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Your gray hair isn't a sign of decline, it's a crown of glory earned through righteous living. Your slow walk isn't weakness, It's the measured pace of someone who's learned not to rush ahead of God's timing. If you've ever doubted your usefulness, write this in the comments. My time is not over. That's your declaration. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what role God has been preparing you to play in these final hours. Stop for a moment. Close your eyes and remember the child you were at 7 years old. Do you recall how different you felt? How you'd sit in Sunday school and somehow know things the teacher hadn't taught yet? How you'd walk into a room and sense things others couldn't feel? How you'd look at the stars and feel like they were calling your name? You thought you were strange. Your family thought you were sensitive. The world told you to grow up, get realistic, stop being so deep. But what if I told you that wasn't childhood imagination? What if that was recognition? What if your spirit was remembering something your mind had forgotten? You weren't just selected from a crowd. You were engraved before the crowd existed. Heaven wrote your name before history began. Listen to the prophet Jeremiah. God said to him, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Jeremiah 1-5. Notice the timing. Not after birth. Not after proving yourself. Before formation. Before breath. Before your first heartbeat. You were already known. Already chosen. Already marked. But here's where it gets deeper. The Hebrew word for knew isn't casual knowledge. It's intimate recognition. It's the same word used when Adam knew Eve and she conceived. God didn't just know about you. He knew you personally, intimately, completely. And when God says set you apart, He's using the word kadash to make holy, to consecrate, to mark as sacred. You weren't just chosen for a task. You were marked as holy property, separated, sanctified, set aside for divine purposes. You spent decades wondering why you felt like an outsider, why conversations felt shallow, why success never satisfied you the way it seemed to satisfy others, why you could be in a room full of people and still feel profoundly alone. Now you know why. You were never meant to fit into a world that rejects the sacred. You were designed for communion with the eternal. 1 Peter 2-9 declares it with authority. You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, His own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. A chosen generation, not individuals randomly picked from various generations, but an entire generation marked for a specific purpose. Your generation. The ones who lived through the transformation of America, who watched prayer leave the schools, who witnessed the family structure crumble, who saw technology replace relationship. You are the bridge generation, the last ones who remember what faith looked like when it cost something. The final witnesses to authentic Christianity before it became entertainment. But let me tell you something that will rock your understanding of who you are. The marking isn't just spiritual, it's genetic, it's cellular, it's written into your very DNA. Scientists are discovering that trauma, experiences, and spiritual encounters can actually alter gene expression and be passed down through generations. Your faith, your prayers, your spiritual battles have been literally encoded into your bloodline. Your children and grandchildren carry fragments of your spiritual DNA, whether they know it or not. Every midnight prayer you whispered changed your cellular structure. Every tear you cried in surrender rewrote your genetic code. Every time you chose faith over fear, you were literally becoming more like the image of God you were created to reflect. This is why the enemy targeted your generation so viciously, why your marriages faced such unusual attacks, why your children rebelled so fiercely, why your finances were under constant assault, why your health was challenged in ways previous generations never experienced. The devil recognized the marking. He knew that if your generation stayed strong, if you passed down authentic faith, if you remained connected to the source, his time would be limited. But here's what he didn't count on. The marking can't be erased, not by divorce, not by bankruptcy, Not by prodigal children, not by disease, not by disappointment, not even by death. You might have forgotten it for a while. Life might have covered it up like dust on an old mirror, but it's still there, still active, still emanating a frequency that makes demons tremble and angels sing. Do you remember how animals seemed to trust you? How children were drawn to you? How even strangers would tell you their deepest secrets within minutes of meeting you? That wasn't coincidence. That was the marking. Your spirit carries a frequency of safety, of authenticity, of divine presence. And here's the revelation that changes everything. That 7-year-old who knew things they hadn't learned, they're still in there. That teenager who felt called to something bigger than themselves, they're still alive in your spirit. That young adult who believed God would use them mightily, their faith is still burning. The marking doesn't age, it doesn't retire. It doesn't weaken with grey hair or shuffle with arthritis. If anything, it gets stronger. Like a fine wine, like aged whiskey, like a vintage instrument, time has only deepened its resonance. No wonder you never fit in. You weren't meant to. You were never a puzzle piece trying to find where you belonged in someone else's picture. You were the blueprint, the original design, the pattern other pieces were meant to match. For 70, 80, 90 years, you've been apologizing for being different. You've been trying to dim your light so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You've been minimizing your spiritual experiences so people wouldn't think you were crazy. But the 16th of July, 2025 marks the end of that apologetic season. The marked ones are coming out of hiding. The chosen generation is stepping into the light. The royal priesthood is remembering their authority. Say it. I was marked. I still carry it. And today, I remember. Say it loud enough for your own ears to hear. Say it with authority. Say it with conviction. Because the world needs the marked ones to stop hiding and start shining. But what happens when a marked generation finally remembers who they are? What happens when the chosen stop apologizing and start operating in their full authority? Now you understand. Every scar on your body isn't a mark of defeat, it's a medal of honor. Every delay you endured wasn't God being slow, it was heaven timing your entrance perfectly. Every tear you cried wasn't wasted water, it was prophetic ink writing the story that only you could author. But here's the truth that will shatter every excuse you've ever made. Your story isn't finished. It's just beginning. Listen to me, chosen one. The world is dying, not from disease, not from war, from spiritual starvation. This generation has everything except the one thing they need most: witnesses who remember what God looks like when he shows up. Your grandchildren don't go to church anymore. They trust Google more than Genesis. They believe in algorithms more than the Almighty. They've never seen a miracle because they've never been around anyone who expected one. But they watch you. Every day, they're reading the book of your life. Every word you speak, every choice you make, every moment you choose faith over fear, it's all being written on their hearts in permanent ink. Deuteronomy 4-9 commands. Only be careful and watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. You are the living bridge between a generation that knew God and a generation that's forgotten him. You hold memories they've never experienced. You carry testimonies they've never heard. You possess wisdom they desperately need but don't know how to ask for. The enemy has been trying to silence you for decades. He whispered that you were too old, too tired, too irrelevant. He convinced you to sit down when God called you to stand up. He told you your time was over when your assignment was just beginning. But the 16th of July, 2025 marks the end of his deception and the beginning of your activation. Moses was 80 when he split the Red Sea. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Abraham was 100 when Isaac was born. Anna was 84 when she prophesied over baby Jesus in the temple. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Every heartbreak prepared you to comfort others. Every financial struggle taught you to trust when resources run low. Every health scare showed you what really matters. Every loss revealed what can never be taken away. You know things about perseverance that millennials learned from motivational posters. You understand sacrifice in ways that Generation Z will never grasp from TikTok videos. You've witnessed God's faithfulness through decades of real-life trials, not just Sunday morning sermons. This isn't the time to retreat into comfortable retirement. This is your moment to advance into purposeful commission. Your voice carries authority that youth cannot manufacture. When you speak about God's goodness, it comes from 70 years of evidence. When you testify about His faithfulness, it's backed by decades of proof. When you declare His love, it echoes with the weight of lived experience. But here's what breaks heaven's heart. Most of you are keeping quiet when the world needs your voice the loudest. Your children are struggling with marriages you could help save. Your grandchildren are battling depression you could heal with wisdom. Your neighbors are drowning in despair you could lift with your testimony. The very thing that makes you feel invisible to the world makes you invaluable to God. While everyone else is shouting for attention, your quiet confidence speaks volumes. While others perform for followers, your authentic faith attracts genuine seekers. Look at those scars again. See them differently now. That surgery scar from your heart attack, it's proof that God wasn't finished with you. That arthritis in your hands, evidence that you've worked faithfully for decades. Those wrinkles around your eyes, each one a line of laughter, wisdom, and endurance. You are not a burden on society. You are a treasure in heaven's vault. The delays in your life weren't punishment, they were positioning. God held you back from certain opportunities because He was preparing you for greater ones. He didn't let you succeed too early, because early success would have made you proud. He waited until humility seasoned you, until compassion matured you, until wisdom crowned you. Those tears you cried, they weren't signs of weakness. They were liquid prayers. Every drop that fell in your midnight hours of desperation became morning dew on someone else's desert. Your pain birthed compassion. Your struggles created strength. Your endurance produced hope. Romans 8:28 isn't just a Bible verse you memorized. It's your lived testimony. All things really have worked together for your good because you love God and are called according to His purpose. But your purpose isn't to sit quietly in the sunset of your years. Your purpose is to shine brightest when the world thinks you should be dimming. This is your legacy activation moment. Everything you've survived has led to this commission. You are being called out of retirement and into revival, out of the shadows and into the spotlight, out of silence and into spiritual warfare. Your weapons aren't physical. Your arsenal is testimony. Your ammunition is faith. Your strategy is love. Your victory is certain because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. The world says you're past your prime. God says you're in your purpose. The culture says you're yesterday's news. Heaven says you're tomorrow's hope. Society says you're too old to matter. The Almighty says you're perfectly aged to minister. Your grandchildren may not read the Bible, but they will read your life. Every page matters, every chapter counts, every word you write with your remaining years becomes eternal literature in their hearts. If this spoke to you, speak back. Comment. My legacy begins now. Say it with authority. Declare it with conviction. Shout it with certainty. Share this with one person you love. This moment isn't just yours. It's a torch. Pass it. Because heaven is counting on you to finish strong, and eternity is waiting to celebrate the masterpiece your life was always meant to become. Something is shifting in the atmosphere. Can you feel it? Right now, as you sit there watching this, heaven has detected movement. Not the thunderous march of armies, not the roar of revival crowds. No, heaven has heard a sound. Not a shout, but the trembling footsteps of someone rising. Your footsteps. For decades you've walked paths that made no sense. You've climbed mountains that led nowhere. You've crossed deserts that seemed endless. But here's what you didn't know. Every single step was being recorded in the halls of eternity. Ecclesiastes 3:15 says, God will call the past to account. Every shuffling step to the mailbox when arthritis screamed. Every painful walk to visit a spouse's grave. Every slow journey up church steps when your knees begged you to stay home. Heaven heard it all. You thought you were just surviving. But in the spirit realm, something else was happening. Your faithfulness was creating tremors. Your persistence was shaking foundations. Your refusal to quit was causing dry bones to rattle in the valley of decision. Remember Moses at the burning bush. Exodus 3-5. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. But here's what most people miss. It wasn't the bush that made the ground holy. It was God's presence responding to Moses' footsteps. He had been walking toward that moment for 80 years. Every step you've taken, even when you couldn't see where you were going, has been leading you to your burning bush moment. And the 16th of July, 2025, is when the fire ignites. Your walk didn't look like victory to the world. When you lost your job at 55 and couldn't find another one. When the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. When your children stopped calling. When your retirement savings vanished in the market crash. The world saw defeat. But heaven was watching the whole time. In Ezekiel 37, the prophet stood in a valley full of dry bones, hopeless, scattered, forgotten. But when God asked, "Can these bones live?" something extraordinary happened. Verse 7 says, "As I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone." What was that rattling sound? It was the sound of movement. The sound of something dead refusing to stay dead. The sound of resurrection beginning with a whisper before it becomes a roar. That's the sound heaven is hearing from your life right now. The rattling of dreams you thought were buried. The stirring of purposes you thought were finished. The trembling of a generation that was supposed to fade quietly into retirement, but is instead rising up for one final, world-changing assignment. You are no longer watching prophecy unfold, you're walking inside of it. Every morning when you choose to get out of bed instead of staying under the covers. Every time you pray when your voice shakes with age. Every moment you refuse to let bitterness take root despite decades of disappointment, you are walking in the supernatural. You are moving in dimensions that younger generations can't even see. But here's the mystery that will take your breath away. In 1 Kings 19, when Elijah was running for his life, exhausted and ready to die, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." But then came verse 8. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. 40 days and nights. At his age. On supernatural strength. God has been feeding you supernatural bread in the wilderness of your later years. That's why you're still here when others have fallen. That's why you still have fight in you when logic says you should be tired. That's why your spirit is stirring when your body says it's time to rest. You've been walking on holy ground for years and didn't realize it. Every step taken in faith, even when your faith was smaller than a mustard seed. Every prayer whispered in the dark when no one was listening. Every act of kindness when you had nothing left to give. The ground is trembling beneath your feet because you're not just an elderly saint waiting for heaven. You are a warrior who has been seasoned in secret, prepared through pain, and positioned for a purpose that will echo through eternity. Your footsteps have been creating spiritual earthquakes. Your persistence has been moving mountains. Your faithfulness has been shaking the gates of hell and causing demons to flee. And now, heaven is pulling back the veil to show you what your walk has accomplished, what your endurance has earned, what your survival has secured. If you feel the ground trembling under your feet right now, type, "I've taken the first step," because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly where those footsteps have been leading. You lit the fire. But now the flame tests what's real. I know where you are right now, chosen one. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when God's presence was so thick you could barely breathe. When revelation hit you like lightning and everything made perfect sense. When you knew, absolutely knew, that you were called for something greater. But then morning came, the feeling faded, the certainty turned to whispers. And now you're sitting in your kitchen at 3 a.m., wondering if you imagined it all. After the mountain comes the silence. After the flame, the still wind. This is the second test, and it's the one that separates the chosen from the curious. Anyone can get excited in the moment. Anyone can feel God's presence when the music is playing and the atmosphere is electric. But can you trust Him when the silence stretches so long it makes you question everything you thought you heard? Listen to me carefully. This silence isn't abandonment, it's assignment. You see, God doesn't speak constantly because constant speaking would make you dependent on His voice instead of faithful to His character. He whispers once, then watches to see if you'll build your life on that whisper when the world is screaming the opposite. Elijah knew this test. 1 Kings 19, fresh off the greatest victory of his ministry. Fire fell from heaven. Prophets of Baal were defeated. God's power was undeniable. But the very next day, Queen Jezebel sent a death threat, and suddenly this mighty prophet was running for his life, hiding in a cave, begging God to let him die. Sound familiar? You touched heaven one day and hell the next. God didn't rebuke Elijah for his fear. Instead, He taught him the most profound lesson in Scripture. The Lord was not in the wind. The Lord was not in the earthquake. The Lord was not in the fire. But after the fire, a still small voice. The power wasn't in the dramatic. The power was in the whisper. And you only hear whispers when you stop waiting for thunder. Why did I feel God so strongly? And now I feel alone again. Because God is not a drug. He's not here to give you spiritual highs that fade by Tuesday morning. He's here to transform you into someone who can carry His presence, even when you can't feel it. Especially when you can't feel it. You've been asking the wrong question. You keep asking, where did God go? When you should be asking, what is God building in the quiet? Isaiah 55:11 promises us, "My word that goes out from my mouth will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." That word He spoke to your spirit didn't evaporate. It went to work, underground, in the dark, where you can't see it. Think about this. When a farmer plants seed, does he panic because he can't see growth the next morning? Number. He trusts the process. He waters the ground even when it looks empty. He tends the soil even when nothing appears to be happening. Your silence is not rejection, it's cultivation. Remember Moses on Mount Sinai? 40 days and 40 nights in God's presence, receiving the 10 Commandments, seeing glory that made his face shine so bright the Israelites couldn't look at him. But then he had to come down the mountain. He had to walk among people who worshipped golden calves while he carried tablets written by the finger of God. The mountaintop was preparation. The valley was application. You didn't get that revelation to keep it. You got it to carry it. And carrying requires character that can only be built in silence, in testing, in moments when you have to choose faith over feelings. Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. Your silence is actually evidence that God trusts you. He only goes quiet with people He knows can handle the weight of His word without constant reassurance. Think about it. Would you give a toddler car keys and trust them to drive responsibly? Number. But you'd trust a mature adult to drive across the country with just a GPS and a full tank of gas. The silence means God sees you as spiritually mature enough to operate on His last word instead of needing a new word every 5 minutes. But oh, how that silence tests you. It makes you second-guess everything, makes you wonder if you misheard, makes you question whether you're really chosen or just desperate, makes you look at other people who seem to have constant confirmation and wonder why your phone isn't ringing with prophetic words. Here's the truth that will set you free. The silence is not rejection, it's recalibration. You're not alone in the quiet. You are being refitted for glory. God is not teaching you to need Him less. He's teaching you to trust him more. There's a massive difference. Need is dependent. Trust is confident. Need says, I can't function without constant signs. Trust says, I know who you are, even when I can't see what you're doing. Job understood this. 23 chapters of silence from God while his world fell apart. His friends accused him. His wife told him to give up. His body was covered in boils. But in the middle of his agony, he declared, Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. That's the sound of someone who passed the silence test. David knew this rhythm. Psalm after psalm written in caves, in exile, in seasons when God felt 1,000,000 miles away. But listen to his conclusion in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Not you were with me when times were good. Not you'll be with me when things get better. You are with me. Present tense, in the valley, in the shadow, in the silence. Your seasons of quiet are not punishment for something you did wrong. They're preparation for something you're about to do right. God doesn't silence you to hurt you. He silences the noise so you can hear your own heartbeat, so you can discover what you really believe when nobody's watching, when no one's cheering, when faith is all you have left. If this is the season you're in, comment, even in silence, I trust him. Let that declaration echo in your spirit until it becomes unshakable conviction, because what's coming next will require the kind of faith that doesn't need constant confirmation, the kind that moves mountains with just a whisper. My dear chosen ones, as we reach the end of this sacred moment together, I want you to remember 3 unshakable truths that will carry you through whatever lies ahead. First, your pain was never pointless. Every tear you've shed, every sleepless night you've endured, every moment you wondered if God had forgotten you, it was all preparation. You weren't being punished, you were being refined. Like gold in the furnace, every trial has burned away what wasn't essential, leaving behind something precious and pure. Second, your silent seasons are not abandonment, they are assignment. When God goes quiet, it's not because he's left you, it's because he trusts you to walk by faith, not by feelings. The silence is where character is built, where dependency becomes trust, where you learn to move on his last word instead of needing a new word every morning. Third, your story is not over. At 70, 80, 90 years old, you are not winding down. You are gearing up. God has been preparing you for decades for this very moment, for this very season, for this very calling that only someone with your scars, your wisdom, your endurance could fulfill. You are not alone in this journey. Right now, there are thousands watching this message who understand exactly what you're feeling. They've walked your path. They've asked your questions. They've cried your tears. And together, we form a community of chosen ones who refuse to let age define our assignment or let silence steal our song. I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. If God has brought you this far through every storm, every loss, every heartbreak, why would he abandon you now? Why would the one who carried you through your darkest valleys leave you on the mountaintop? Before we part ways, I want to pray over you. Not just a casual prayer, but the kind of prayer that moves heaven and changes atmospheres. If you're comfortable, I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and receive what I'm about to speak over your life. Heavenly Father, I come before your throne right now, carrying the hearts of your chosen ones. These precious souls who have weathered storms that would have destroyed lesser spirits. These warriors who have fought battles in silence, who have stood when everything in them wanted to fall, who have believed when hope seemed foolish. Lord, I speak blessing over their remaining years. Not just survival, but revival. Not just existence, but extraordinary purpose. Open their eyes to see what you see when you look at them, not aged, but seasoned, not worn down, but built up, not forgotten, but positioned for their greatest impact. Father, remove every lie of the enemy that whispers they're too old, too tired, too late. Replace those lies with your truth, that the best wine comes from old vines, that the deepest wisdom comes from long experience, that your power is made perfect in weakness. Heal their hearts from disappointments that still ache. Restore their hope in dreams they thought were buried. Reignite their passion for your purpose. Surround them with divine connections, supernatural provision, and peace that surpasses understanding. And Lord, in the quiet moments when they can't feel your presence, remind them that feelings lie, but your word stands forever. You will never leave them nor forsake them. You are the same yesterday, today, and forever. What you've started in them, you will complete. Give them strength for each day, wisdom for each decision, and joy for the journey ahead. Let them feel your hand upon their shoulder right now, your love surrounding them like a warm embrace, your voice whispering in their spirit that their best chapters are still being written. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share one thing that God spoke to your heart during this message. Don't keep it to yourself. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Remember, your voice matters, your story matters, your faith matters. If this message blessed you, please share it with someone who needs to know they're not forgotten. Share it with that friend who's been questioning God's plan. Share it with that family member who thinks their useful years are behind them. Together, we can remind each other that being chosen never expires. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. This isn't just another YouTube channel, it's a community of believers who understand that age is not decline, it's refinement. Join us as we continue to explore what it means to be chosen, called, and commissioned by the King of Kings. Thank you for spending this sacred time with me. Thank you for opening your heart to receive. Thank you for choosing faith over fear, hope over despair, trust over doubt. Until we meet again, remember, you are chosen, you are loved, you are not alone, and your story is far from over. God bless you, beloved ones. Go in peace, go in power, go in purpose. The best is yet to come.